Hi, everybody. I'm Will Myers from Read and Reaction. Thanks for joining me here today. I'm going to do something a little bit new. We'll see how everybody likes it. And certainly if it's something that goes over well, then it's something we'll do a little bit more of here at Read and Reaction. But what I've done is, I've gotten a couple of requests recently by various readers who've said they just don't have time or are not able because they consume their Gator content in the car. For whatever reason, they would appreciate an audio version of the articles that I've written. And so I've written an article today about Trevor Etienne and his commitment to Billy Napier's Florida program. And so I'm going to go ahead and read that here. Everybody gets some audio, and hopefully that's enjoyable to you. If you enjoy Read and Reaction, please support us. Go over to patreon.com/read and reaction. For a commitment as low as $2 a month, you can get extra episodes of Nick Knudsen and I's podcast, Stand Up and Holler. We also have all of our Stand Up and Holler episodes over there, commercial free for anyone who wants to look at that. And then certainly these audio reads of the articles are going to be incorporated within that Patreon as well. So hopefully you like this. This one's free, but if you want to support us, head over there to Patreon. Really, really appreciate you helping us out. And hopefully we'll do some cool stuff this off season where, it makes it well worth your while for joining over there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go over the article that I've written this week, detailing Trevor Etienne. So the article's titled, Billy Napier Shows Recruiting Chops Again with Commitment of 4-Star Trevor Etienne. Trevor Etienne, brother of Jaguars running back Travis Etienne, announced his commitment to Florida during Saturday's All-American Bowl. Etienne is a 4-star recruit out of Jennings, Louisiana, and the 183rd ranked player nationally, and a big addition for Gators coach Billy Napier. That's not just true because Etienne is a blue chip player, though. It's also true because while running back was a perceived strength coming into 2021, Napier only has DeMarcus Bowman, Lorenzo Lingard, and Naquan Wright on the roster coming in for 2022. Add to that the utter inability of Greg Knox and Dan Mullen to bring in high school running backs consistently, and having a blue chip player at that particular position is a bigger deal than most commitments. But Etienne's commitment got me thinking about this class in general. Etienne's addition puts Florida at just 11 commits, meaning there is significant room for more additions to the class. But would that be a good thing? Jim McElwain's 2015 transition class was extremely top-heavy, with 5-star commits Martez Ivey and CeCe Jefferson, but only one other player in the top 300, Jordan Scarlett, was 117th. The 17 3-star players he added was an early alarm bell that his recruiting might not be up to snuff. Dan Mullen's 2018 transition class was much better, with contributions from multiple players at the top of the class and a bona fide star in Kyle Pitts. So obviously we have to look beyond just the transition class when we're evaluating. But even though I've written about how the 2023 bump class is when we're going to get to truly evaluate Billy Napier's recruiting ability, that doesn't mean the transition class isn't important at all. After all, while Nick Saban's 2008 class at Alabama produced 9 All-SEC players, his 2007 class still produced another 2. So just how much can Coach Napier squeeze out of this class, and what kind of ranking might we see when the dust settles after February's signing day? Looking at history. The addition of Etienne takes Florida up to 40th in the 24/7 sports rankings. When fans were freaking out about the Gators being at 70th, or when rivals were mocking Florida for it, it never made sense because Florida had so few recruits. Just as with Etienne, signing 1 or 2 high-level players will make the Gators shoot up the boards towards where we're really accustomed to. That's because the addition of Etienne also takes the Gators' average player ranking up to 90.09. That ranks 14th nationally and is right in line with what we should expect in a transition recruiting class. What that says is that this class currently lacks numbers, but the ones who have committed are of relatively high quality. After all, Dan Mullen's 4 recruiting classes at Florida had average player rankings of 90.75, 90.56, 90.74, and 90.30. So there isn't a drop-off in player quality even with Napier's late start. But rankings still matter, both from a player acquisition perspective, but also as a harbinger of what's to come. So the question I think is worth answering is, where can Napier get this class at a bare minimum, and where can he push it if he truly has a successful run up to National Signing Day? To answer that, we first have to define successful. Historically, Florida coaches taking over have had relatively strong transition classes. Ron Zook had a national ranking of 10th. with 4 top 100 players and 9 top 300 players. Urban Meyer had a national ranking of 12th with 2 top 100 players and 15 top 300 players. Will Muschamp had a national ranking of 11th with 4 top 100 players and 12 top 300 players. Jim McElwain ranked 21st with 2 top 100 players and 4 top 300 players. Dan Mullen ranked 14th with 4 top 100 players and 10 top 300 players. And Billy Napier right now in the 24/7 Sports ranking is ranked 40th with 3 top 100 players and 6 top 300 players. The weakest transition class here clearly belongs to Jim McElwain. He lagged behind not only in national ranking, but in total top 300 players. You might have picked Urban Meyer as the best of the group with his 15 total top 300 players, but that class was a little bit light on top end talent with only 2 top 100 players. The good news is that with nearly a month to go, Napier is already ahead of McElwain's pace, both in terms of total top 300 players and also top 100 players. The Florida class currently sits at 190.63 points. To hit a top 30 class, Napier is going to have to get to at least 220 points. But the good news is that isn't a very high bar to hit and could be achieved with just a couple of high-level commits or even just by filling out the class. For instance, let's take what is probably the worst-case scenario. That would be Napier signing the same number of recruits as the transition class with the fewest players of the last 5 Florida coaches. Urban Meyer had 17. And so let's say that beyond Etienne, he's only able to sign one other top 300 player. So let's say Jaleel Florence at 202, one top 400 player, Kamari Terrell at 386, one top 500 player, Arliss Boardingham, 479th, one top 600 player, Ahmad Moten, 567, one top 700 player, Francois Knowlton, 626, and one top 900 player, Miguel Mitchell, 891. That wouldn't be a class that anyone is going to really write home about, but it would equate to a point total of 234.27, which based on the last 4 seasons rankings would put the Gators 20th. That isn't where Florida wants to be, but you can see that just by filling out this class with depth, Napier is going to lift the overall score for the Gators significantly. But what if Napier is able to hit on some big recruits? There are still some really big targets on the board, especially if Billy can work his magic when he gets some of them on campus for their official visits. There was disappointment that 5-star recruit Harold Perkins committed to Texas A&M at the Under Armour game last weekend. But then Perkins, who's being heavily recruited by Gators early enrollee Kamari Wilson, scheduled an official visit to Florida. Napier and Wilson also appear to be pulling out all the stops for 4-star recruit Jacoby Matthews, 36th rated overall. It's an uphill battle for Napier for sure, but if he flips Perkins, gets Matthews to come as well, and fills out the class as described above, the Gators score immediately jumps to 260.25. That would probably put them around the 14th place ranking, right where Dan Mullen finished in 2018 for his transition class. Add another surprise like Lake Charles receiver Trevante Citizen, 113th overall, or Montgomery Catholic linebacker TJ Dudley, 198th overall, and this class could sneak into the top 10. Beyond volume. But let's say Napier does end up 14th in the way I described above. Is that a better class than the 14th ranked transition class Dan Mullen brought in for 2018? It absolutely is. The reason is that while the rankings above are something we track, I'm not sure they're all that important when we evaluate transition recruiting classes. The reason is exactly what I've been harping on now for weeks. This class needs to provide a couple of studs and then some solid depth. But if you're relying on it to push your program forward, you're in trouble. We saw that this year as Florida tried to rely on its 2018 class, Jacob Copeland, Richard Garage, Emory Jones, Trey Dean, Amari Burney, and Damian Pierce, and things fell apart. That suggests that a high number of starters is less important, and instead we need to worry about the quality of those starters. I post this chart just about every year, but I think it's important to reiterate. There is a significant distinction between a player ranked 15th and a player ranked 50th. And that distinction grows even more between a player ranked 50th and a player ranked 100th. But once you get beyond about 200, the probability of NFL draft success is about equivalent, at least going out to players ranked 500th. That tells us that if you're looking for impact players, you probably need to bone up on top 100 or really top 25 guys. That's why a class that includes Wilson, Perkins, Matthews, and even Shamar James, who's 64th nationally, is impressive. The numbers say you're likely to get 2 or 3 draftable players out of that mix if that's where Napier is able to end up. And this is exactly what we see if we look at the history of transition classes at Florida. There are 4 total players in all of the 5 transition classes under Dan Mullen, Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, Urban Meyer, and Ron Zook. There are 4 players ranked 1st through 25th. Out of those 4 players, all 4 became starters, and 2 of them became all SEC. There were 2 players ranked 26th through 50th. Only one of those became a starter, and none of them were all SEC. 51 to 75, there were 6 players, 2 became starters, and 1 was all SEC. 75th through 100th, there were 4 players, 3 of them became starters, 1 became all SEC. 100th to 200th, 16 players, 8 became starters, 2 became all SEC. And 200th to 300th, 19 players, 9 became starters, and 3 became all SEC. So top 25 players have accounted for just 8% of the top 300 players signed in those 5 transition classes. But they've accounted for 15% of the players who have been consistent starters more than 10 career starts. And they've accounted for 22% of the players who have been named all SEC. You can see that Florida hasn't exactly knocked it out of the park bringing in top tier talent in those classes, only 6 total top 50 players. But when they have, guys like Ciatric Faison and Martez Ivey have performed. At a bare minimum, they almost always, so 5 out of 6 of the top 50, end up starters. Other than that, all SEC play seems to be relatively random. Kyle Pitts was ranked 162nd. Marcus Roberson was ranked 73rd. Randy Hand was 91st. Channing Crowder was 242. Luchez Purifoy was 261. And Ryan Stamper was 161. That means that filling out the rest of the class with volume is likely more important than focusing on just the rankings. Takeaway. Interestingly, Urban Meyer actually had the highest number of top 300 players, 15, but he only got 4 starters from his transition class. And I think this suggests 2 things. First, getting significant playing time out of your transition class is overrated. Second, Meyer's 2006 class was so good that only the elite athletes from the 2005 class could earn their way onto the field. So that's the challenge for Napier. He already has a player with a chance to fit in that top tier category, Kamari Wilson, ranked 28th, and Perkins, ranked 5th, and Matthews, 36th. If you add them to that group, and he has some guys who should be able to not just crack the starting lineup, but be a true difference maker as Napier gets recruiting going in 2023 and 2024. Maybe Trevor Etienne becomes a star, but that's far from guaranteed. But I do think that if you look at where Napier is targeting high-end talent, he's relatively position agnostic. Wilson and Matthews are both safeties. But when it comes to Etienne, he's definitely at a position of need. The same can be said for Perkins and fellow elite linebacker Shamar James. And then the transfer of Cameron Waits, combined with the additions of Jalen Farmer, David Connor, and Christian Williams to the offensive line, suggests piling up numbers at a position of need as well. And that's really what a transition class should be. Focus on the elite talent targets as much as you can, and then fill up with depth at positions where your numbers are sparse. Napier seems to be doing that to start, giving himself a shot to get exactly what he needs from this class to build a championship program. Now comes the hard work of making sure the 2023 class does the same. Well, that's my article this week entitled Billy Napier shows recruiting chops again with commitment of 4-star Trevor Etienne. Again, let me know if you enjoy this, if this is something that you all would like to see more often with the articles that I write. Certainly would like to hear feedback and know if this is a valuable thing for you as well. Again, I ask you if you're willing, and if you like what we do over here at Read and Reaction, go over to patreon.com/Read and Reaction, support us over there. Or if you can just support us by going and reading the articles or clicking on the YouTube links, very, very much appreciated. So again, this is Will Miles for Read and Reaction. Thanks for hanging out with me here, and hopefully you enjoyed the article.